Greetings and welcome. This is the ThaBadbrey Herbalist Asar of the ThaBadbrey Herbal.co.uk. And today I am going to be going over a brief weather analysis of what is taking place in London today. Alright? As I said, this is the ThaBadbrey Herbalist Asar, ancient astrologer of the ThaBadbreyHerbal.co.uk. So let's get down to it. Now, a lot of people got in contact with me and they wanted to know what was taking place in London City, UK today in terms of the weather. They're hearing all sorts of thunder and there's lots of sporadic weather taking place. And they want to know what is actually happening, yeah? Astrologically speaking, all right? Now, you may or may not be aware, I usually forecast the weather every week for 7 days or so following when the moon actually changes phase. Because when she changes phase, she has an effect upon the weather and how the weather manifests. All right. So let's just analyze the chart of the moment. Now, this is the chart of the moment. Yeah. This is what the weather looks like in London right now. The time is 4:25. Yeah. 4:25 p.m. 16:25 hours on the 26th of April 2017 on a Wednesday, the day of Mercury. During the new moon, the new moon was at 1:16 today. Yeah. 13:16 hours, and we are in the hour of the moon right now on the day of Mercury. So, what's happening in terms of the weather? Now, first of all, this is a branch of astrology called Astrometeorology, which deals with weather delineation, weather prediction, and weather analysis. So, what I'm going to do is analyze the weather and give an overview of what's actually happening and why we are experiencing sporadic weather in London today. So let me get to the point. Let's get down to it. The ThaBadbrey Herbalist is our ancient astrologer of the ThaBadbrey Herbal. So looking at this chart at the moment right now, this chart refreshes, well, it's going to refresh in the next 10 seconds. It refreshes I think every 3 minutes or so. Now, basically looking at this, we can see that the moon right now it has just left a conjunction with the sun, i.e. it is combusted by the sun. Another way of saying that it is within 8 degrees of the sun. Any planet is within 8 degrees of the sun is known as being combust. All right, being combusted. Okay. And the moon is combusted by the sun. New moon. Yeah. Now, as it is a new moon, and due to the fact that tomorrow, I think it's tomorrow. Let's see. Let's check the lunar calendar. Yes, tomorrow on the 27th of April 2017. You see this P right here? This is the lunar calendar. And you can get this lunar calendar on lunarium.co.uk, which is what I use. And this lunar calendar, it has this P stands for Perigee, which means the moon will be at its perigee tomorrow. Perigee just means it is at the closest to the Earth in its orbit. All right? You have apogee, this is the moon, and this is the Earth. Apogee is when the moon is furthest away from the Earth in its orbit, and perigee is when it's closest to the Earth in terms of its orbit. So I'll go back to the lunar calendar, and we can see that the moon will be at its perigee tomorrow. In other words, the moon is very close to the Earth right now, all right? And it is the new moon, and usually, in terms of the weather, when it is a new moon, i.e. when the moon is combusted by the sun, and when the new moon coincides with the moon being in perigee to the Earth, what usually happens is we get cloudy weather, and usually sometimes we can get hurricanes and sometimes we can get storms. All right. So let's go back to the chart of the moment. So the moon is approaching its perigee to the Earth. For those that don't know, see this center ball right here, right in the middle of the astrological chart. This is actually the Earth. All right. I think this is a point that a lot of astrologers don't point out, but this ball here is actually the Earth. And astrologically speaking, all of the planets are seen to be, from our perspective, the planets are seen to be rotating and orbiting the Earth from an astrological perspective, not an astronomical perspective, but from an astrological perspective. And in terms of the way Ptolemy actually had a diagram of all of the planets orbiting the Earth, he was speaking from an astrological perspective and he was not speaking from an astronomical perspective. But what happened is what he was actually purporting was it got twisted and misunderstood by a large majority of society, and people actually believed that astronomically Ptolemy was actually explaining that the Earth had all the planets rotating around it. And that's not what he was saying. That's a misunderstanding. He was speaking on an astrological perspective. All right. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let me get back to the weather. So let's go. Now, the moon is approaching its perigee, which means it's going to, and it's also a new moon. So that means it's going to be very stormy and very cloudy as a result of that. Now, also, if you look at the 10th house, this 10th house, this proportion over here is the 10th house. Yeah. And this represents directly above us. All right. The highest point in the sky. And the 10th house cusp, this line here is the cusp, is on Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. It's an air sign. So this means that there's going to be a lot of wind high up in the sky at this point in London at 51 north latitude in London City, UK today. Now, due to that fact, this being the highest point of the chart in the heavens, so to speak, the ruler of the 10th house cusp, which is the ruler of Gemini, Mercury, usually controls the wind in astrology, especially in these astrometeorological charts. All right. Mercury is right down here. And as you can see, Mercury is conjunct Uranus. And Uranus is in Aries. Aries is a hot and dry sign, all right, which usually denotes a lot of sporadic bright spells. So Uranus actually being in Aries and Mercury, which denotes the wind, being conjunct Uranus, and Mercury is moving retrograde. So this tells me straight away from looking at this, looking at all of the symbolism, is that Mercury is the wind, and the wind actually traveled backwards. Mercury was conjunct the sun. It left the sun, moving backwards and went towards Uranus. All right. So it was conjunct the sun, which brings in a lot of hot air. So Mercury being the wind and the air, combined with the sun, like a few days ago, became combust. All of that air that Mercury brought upon his back became very warm as a result of the conjunction that Mercury had with the sun. And then all of that hot air, because it's hot now due to his conjunction with the sun, also came into contact with the moon. Okay? And the moon was moving in opposite direction to the direction that Mercury was moving in. Mercury's moving backwards and the moon was moving forward. Yeah? Now, the moon, as she entered Taurus, which is her exaltation, she likes being in Taurus. And the moon, by nature, is temporarily cold and moist. So as she got into Taurus, she was able to express herself and become more cold and more moist in terms of her temporal expression. All right. So all of that coldness and moistness was transferred over to Mercury when she moved past Mercury. All right. So all of that coldness, moistness was transferred over to Mercury, and Mercury had already had air that had been transformed into hotness as a result of his conjunction with the sun. So what you get is hot air and cold air colliding and combining with each other. All right. Now, usually in terms of the weather, that is a recipe for some type of sporadic weather taking place, or some type of storm, something sporadic taking place as a result of hot air and cold air mixing together. Now, to make it even worse, Mercury, with all of that cold and hot air combining around him, he carries on moving, traversing back down, and now he left Taurus and went into Aries, which is a hot and dry sign, and then he's becoming conjunct with Uranus. And Uranus is known for spontaneity. I call Uranus spontaneous Uranus, all right? Because Uranus is known for causing spontaneity, unexpected events. And in terms of the weather, it usually denotes either very bright spells and heat spikes or a sporadic storm that is unexpected. So Mercury having all that cold, all of that cold air as well as the hot air combined, and then him coming into contact with spontaneous Uranus, that is a recipe to cause some type of storm to take place as a result of it. Which is why what we're seeing in the sky today in London City is a fluctuation between a lot of stormy weather, which is stormy weather and clouds as a result of the moon approaching her perigee, as well as being a new moon. The winds are increasing, and then Mercury, who has hot and cold air combined, comes into contact, well, has come into contact with Uranus, which causes spontaneity. So we're getting alternation of stormy weather, clouds, and then heat spikes and thunder. And that's the reason why the weather is manifesting in the way it's actually manifesting. And as the planetary hours change throughout the day, today is Wednesday, which is the day of Mercury. All right. So as you can see here, these are the days of the week. Again, this is Lunarium. I use this to look at the planetary hours. All right. You can use this as well, lunarium.co.uk. And these are the days of the week. This is Monday, which is the day of the moon. You can see the glyph for the moon. Then you have Tuesday, which is the day of Mars. And the glyph of Mars is here. Then you have Wednesday, which is the day of Mercury. All right. And this is highlighted because we're on the day of Mercury right now. And due to the fact that it is 4:38 in the afternoon, 16 hours and 38 minutes in the afternoon. Yes. We have just entered the planetary hour of Saturn. Now, what you would notice is that between 3:24 and 4:37 today was the hour of the moon. And during that time, we had a lot of sporadic rain spells as well as a lot of thunder taking place due to the fact that the moon is approaching her perigee. All right. And as the hour changed into the hour of Saturn, due to the fact that Saturn right now is right at the bottom of the chart and is within Sagittarius, which is a hot and dry sign, and the fact that Saturn is also making, this is like a trine, making a trine to the sun, what we get is the sun shining through as a result. So all the way from about, let me see, from 4:37 hours to 17:50 hours today, it's very likely that you're going to get a lot more sun than we were actually getting earlier. All right. And that's how you look at the planetary hours and how they have an effect upon the weather as well. You need to look at all of it as a whole. Now, there you go. That's what's happening astrologically in terms of the weather today in London and why it's manifesting in the way it's actually manifesting. The other thing is that, see this area over here that I was focusing upon? That's causing all of the sporadic weather to take place. Uranus, spontaneous Uranus, is also making a opposition to Jupiter. Jupiter is in Libra, and Jupiter being in Libra also denotes clouds. So what's happening is all of these clouds are being pulled through and brightened up by spontaneous Uranus. So you're going to get a lot of clouds that look dark, and then they're going to be very bright as a result of it. It's going to be very sporadic as a result. You're going to get showers, stormy weather, in conjunction with a lot of bright spells and maybe some thunder. And it's going to alternate probably till the end of the day, until sunset. And that's that. The ThaBadbrey Herbalist Asar of the ThaBadbrey Herbal.co.uk, ancient astrologer. And I will continue to spread this ancient knowledge. It is not going to stop. I will be back.